Okay, so yeah, continuing with that structure, I was comparing this to Cormac McCarthy's The Road because in that essentially there's nothing left to eat but other people, and so that's kind of what starts to happen here because, as I said, agriculture and meat farming was considered to be obsolete, so it was made obsolete. So yeah, no food, and just the minor amounts of supplements they were being given, each day with their cocktail of drugs by the government is, obviously not being distributed anymore because the public is at war with the government. Uh, you know, um, yeah. And so, like, uh, we yeah, also retired fishing, yeah, even decide to leave insects alone, and thus with metabolisms already greatly reduced, limiting appetites, must folks turn to the consumption of lab-grown meats, instead of farming and stuff like that. So as I said, agriculture, farming, all stuff of the past. And so now what's left? We gotta eat each other. And so problem being, when the crash happened, an appetite splashed back into all the disaffected, aggressively, yet or splash back into all those who are taking the cocktail aggressively, as I stated, yet there was no actual mass farming of agriculture in operation, and like nothing, no even like grassroots, like maybe there are people who had gardens and stuff like that, but they certainly weren't growing them for the purpose of mass production or anything. If there was food, they polished it off already. Whatever little amounts there may have been from sort of independent, hobby levels of, say, growing a couple tomatoes here and there. And so, these chemically deficient survivors, have turned this world into one of carnage where structural systems have completely fallen, and many desperate and deprived individuals, deprived, not depraved, because they are now very hungry and they're hurting, they're suffering, they end up feasting on others who they can overpower. So, we've been returned to nature in another way, back to survival of the fittest. And it's, since no one's got guns or anything, it's easier to just eat the person beside you when, you are, like, desperately chasing your next fix to keep yourself from rapidly approaching this egregious fucking death, agonizing death, where you are completely at the behest of whatever illness was ailing you before. And, you can't, as many people who live in rural areas, unless you have the internet and you order drugs off the dark net, you can't get drugs unless you're near a source. And those sources tend to be in cities. So everyone just remains in cities and start eating each other. Because, getting nutrients just to survive, when you're an addict who's physically addicted, and I can attest to this, eating, sleeping, hygiene, sex, all that stuff comes after getting your fix, because your brain is wired to think that, oh, the withdrawals are killing me, so if I don't take this, I am going to die. That's physical addiction for you, and that is why it is so fucking devastating. And so, these desperate, deprived individuals feast on each other, and some even attempt, get this is very uplifting, some attempt to procreate for the sake of eating the fetus. Ironically, the mutant babies turn out to be the ones who overpowered and ultimately devoured their parents. As I said, these children, these offsprings of these people, they are like more personifications of diseases than they are people. And so, they end up eating their parents who want to eat them, which is very darkly ironic, in my opinion. So they also then, branch out and attack other people too, because, they got to feed themselves. You can tell I was K-holing when I was starting to write this part, because you see how the words go all fucking over the place? Yeah. So their longevity permitted is oftentimes the highly exaggerated diseases, and I'm going to do my ketamine impression. But this creates a race of newly mutant humanoids that more so rely on tendencies. Like, no, seriously, I'm not trying to make fun of people who have speech impediments or anything. That is what you sound like when you are on a heavy dose of ketamine. It's very hard to say certain words. It's weird. This is not a good thing. I've done enough to the point where I can actually restrain my voice, so it's just it kind of sounds like I have a heavy accent, but every now and then though I'll still lose my train of thought and whatnot. But I do a lot less ketamine these days than I was doing at the time of writing this. Yeah, so basically, the humans become mutated, and the tendencies of the illnesses that were once combated, or illnesses that they may have inherited but were dormant, and they took the cocktail, and once the cocktail was gone, and they were getting a tainted version of it. This basically created walking human incarnations of malicious, just vicious viruses. Going back to those with the guns, i.e. the military, the reserves, police, whatever remains from the shells of government infrastructure. So that means, those with the guns are not being policed anymore by the superiors. They are just running around with guns. They deemed the execution of anyone they saw fit for, receiving a bullet to the head to be put down. They thought that, that is their prerogative. So they become these fucked up, sort of malicious, or not malicious, sorry. Sure, let's do a little alliteration. Militias going around and doing a little vigilanteism. Just a little bit. And so due to the famine, most people sustain themselves on a mixture of vitamins to cut the speed, and often, because, you have to keep moving when living in such a brutal world. In World War II, speed was given on all sides of the Axis and the Allies. Yes, even the Allies were getting not just speed, but speed and barbiturate pills, pet pills, basically. So, this is not that different, only more illegal, less government sanctioned. So, they're not getting pure product. And even when in World War II, for example, the Axis, they gave German soldiers, because they wanted them to be Ubermensch, super soldiers, Superman, fucking Master Aryans, fucking whatever. And by the way, I met a lot of German people, and I've gotten along really well with them. I used to romp with this German exchange student who lived up the street from me. Oh boy, she was something beautiful indeed. Um, yeah, so oftentimes they would take the speed and these vitamins, and they would go around looking for human meat. And keep in mind, these drug cocktails are becoming more and more diluted down, more cut with hard drugs, harder to find. There's less resources for people to trade for them, and so people start becoming more and more primal, and they are relying on just speed so they can just get past all the human parts themselves and eat everyone around them. Scavenge what they can. And so this diet obviously makes many surviving members of the public psychotic and predatory in nature, as primitive ways to assume overall behavior, language, cultural, and societal norms all become irrelevant vestiges of what once was. What were once cities are now literal urban jungles, festering with the new generation of infected offspring. So, as I said, the kids that were procreated while these people were experiencing this withdrawal from this sort of miracle cocktail. Now there's these mutant babies crawling all over the place, fucking attacking people and shit. And so, in these smoldering remnants of where denizens once roamed and called home, an unexpected adversity sprang into motion when various gaggles of ravenous citizens stormed a series of heavily reinforced and often subterranean government black sites. Because, the military, whatever's left of them and all that, they're going around just fucking killing people. They're not paying, they're no longer protecting bases and black sites. And for those of you who don't know what a black site is, these are real places that not just, are operated primarily, like the ones I've heard of are in the US, not just by the government, the military, the CIA, but by police too. Like Guantanamo Bay is kind of like a black site. It's where you take people to essentially torture them and to do it in an area that's, it's away from, essentially the public's eye. So, we have no idea what's going on. We can't scrutinize it and say, hey, that's highly unethical. Maybe we shouldn't do that. But like I heard of a black site in Chicago where cops would take suspected criminals and just beat confessions out of them, in the modern day, which is violating, I'm pretty sure, and you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I believe torture in the modern world through physical violence that is probably going to be irreparable to the person, because, like with the Chicago blackout site that I read about that the police had, they would chain people up, and, I imagine probably smashing out their kneecaps and whatnot. Where are the drugs? Where are the drugs? I need something to show the press, damn it. So, that's what black site is, basically. And so, the public finds out there's these black sites. Because, as you see, during these days of unification between those in suspended animation from the cocktail, there were still people who received treatment that had criminal urges. So, despite all those who ended up going, oh, look at the sanctity of life. Maybe we should stop eating other living beings. Criminals are still going to be fucking criminals. A lot of people they're hardwired that way. Serial killers, they're hardwired that way. They're beyond reform. Look at Ed Kemper, that guy fucking conned his way out of he conned psychiatrists into releasing him after killing his grandparents, and he went on to kill multiple women and his mother. And did some fairly disturbing shit with their bodies, so this is kind of why I'm in favor of the death penalty for certain people who are very obviously beyond reform. unless the death penalty is what they want. Then they can rot in jail, because they shouldn't be given what they want if they believe they have the onus upon themselves to take the lives of other people and to fucking take sex from them without consent, stuff like that. I'm not saying rapists deserve the death penalty. I'm perfectly fine with rapists going to jail and getting fucking raped by other prisoners, because that's typically what happens. Punishment fits crime. I mean, I know, eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. Well, technically it leaves one person with one eye, so. You don't, like, the justice system doesn't really mean anything if consequences don't actually serve as a deterrent for criminals. Just a little tangent there, but I just wanted to state that. I know it's divisive, but I wanted to give a brief explanation for why I'm totally in favor of the death penalty. And not that, like, shoot them up with phenobarbital and give them a nice little high before they go into sleep. Like, no. Like, if you're going to do lethal injection, at least break out the old, like, 3 fucking compounds that they would inject them with. One of them being, sodium pentothal or whatever, phenobarbital. Something along those lines, so it would knock them out, and then they would give them a very painful muscle relaxant, and then something that would stop their heart. So it was not a pleasant experience. There are some people who would be like screaming through gritted teeth. And you know what? If you are like Timothy McVeigh or whatever, I don't give a fuck if you suffer when you die. You killed a lot of fucking innocent children because you're mad at the government. I mean, at least he did, Timothy McVeigh, he did say he was remorseful for that, but still, you were intending to kill hundreds of people, and you did, so you don't deserve to live. Your privileges, I'm not that I'm saying life is a privilege, I'm a pessimist, I think it's kind of the opposite, but let's just say, because as a living being, we should have moral standards. Even if those moral standards are an illusion and a result of programming, we should still act like we are responsible and ethical. Because unlike the circumstances of the story, we have a lot of resources at our fingertips. We have information readily available. We have help if we want to receive it. Unfortunately, as I've stated in my channel, help for people like me who, where our crimes are, taking drugs ourselves. Something I would say is a victimless crime, as long as it's not begetting other crimes as a result, or hurting other people in the process. If you are hurting other people through your crimes, there should be some sort of payment. I don't think prison is quite the best solution. I don't know exactly what is, but I am very much in favor of severe punishments for severe offenders. So yeah, Ted Bundy, when he got the electric chair, burn Bundy, burn. Fuck him. I don't care. That guy fucking would rape girls while he was beating their heads in with rocks. Like, he was a truly fucking reprehensible human being. Came back to the story. So, these people left over, they start storming the black sites, and, because, these criminals back when these cocktails were being distributed, well, how are you going to punish someone who's living forever? Jail becomes kind of irrelevant. Words. Speak. Syntax. Speak. Syntax. Vocabulary. I can do. Jails become irrelevant because, what's cooping someone up who has nothing but time going to do to them? So, what the government did in secret is they took these criminals, who were just going on fucking sprees, by the way, because if you think you're invincible and you're a criminal, the fuck else are you gonna do? You're gonna capitalize. You're gonna take advantage of the circumstances you've been afforded. Um, which, I just explained kind of the social commentary behind that. And so, the people who are, engaging in just about any barbaric, inhumane, and cruelly sordid, sadistic action you could imagine, they are, not, the government doesn't want them to spoil the facade of overall contentment and amicability found upon administration of these life preserving and perpetuating cocktails of drugs. The government decides to penalize these people and use military systems to do so in a very covert way. So, basically fly by night while they're sleeping, grab and throw in one of these black sites. And the basis of what to do with the people who have been apprehended, these offenders, to sort of balance, and they balance to the best of their abilities, but how the government is with ethics, and how they are when it comes to experimenting on the public and prisoners, like a lot of MK Ultra, like look at Whitey Bulger. When he was at Alcatraz, they dosed him with fucking like very high doses of LSD in solitary confinement without his knowledge. And he was very anti-drug after that, despite being a drug dealer. But he didn't drink, he didn't do drugs because he was terrified by what he experienced under MK Ultra. And so what the government does here, unsurprisingly, not that different. So what they do is they they decide to use these criminals in these black sites. They build underground cells for the criminals, and they start taking away various bits and pieces of the cocktail they were once afforded. And, they rationalize this to themselves as, oh, well, we're going to, save this person went around and stole, 50 cars and crashed 10 of them. We'll take one pill out of their cocktail and just keep them in a cell and see what happens. And so, as I said, there's 5 years of utopia where the shortages weren't happening and people were content. So there's 5 years where these black sites were in operation. And, there were obviously more serious criminals, people going around raping, killing to the best of their ability, people who, are pretty hard to kill at this point. I mean, you could still physically kill them, but it would take a lot of effort because, when they're with this cocktail, they'd be able to heal pretty rapidly. But, so for the more, abhorrent offenders, let's say like the rapists, they, take more of the cocktail away and keep them in these black sites. And so, a perfect excuse for the government to see what would happen if these cocktails are indeed, they have components subtracted, and what that would do to a person. Because they want to study the effects of limiting the intake of such drugs. And at that juncture, that was pretty poorly understood. The government sort of rolled this out because they knew the positive effects since the elites were taking it anyways. Why did the Queen live to be like fucking 195 or whatever, she's just taking this magical cocktail that the government's hiding from all of us. It's not just fiction. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, of course, that's what the elite would do if they had something like that. But they didn't know what the side effects were because they had a continuous flow. And, why would you stop taking it if it's giving you all the fucking greatest things in the world? you know, they had a very poor understanding at the time of what these side effects were, and since the demand to curtail overpopulation and satiate the public was overwhelming, they, you know, rolled this stuff out, like, really without a thorough understanding, which happens. And no, that's not like a dog whistle to, like, fucking, like, COVID vaccines are going to make you fucking, like, a soy boy, femboy, fish monster, Dunwich. Or no, Dunwich words, fucking, that doesn't have the fish monsters. It's one of the fish monsters by H.P. Lovecraft. Shadow over and Smith. Anyways, yeah, quickly they found that the side effects were so grave that each prisoner was, I'm just kind of holding here too, I can tell, assigned their own individual subterranean cell, where those in the know would observe the side effects of depriving subjects of various, different, parts of, this chemical cocktail. Having been abandoned since the fall of society, these criminals and their respective issues mutated far beyond any other member of the general public impacted by these shortages. So essentially they had a 5-year jump start on all the people who are becoming mutated into, like, these personified, diseases that are, like, predators now more than humans, along with the baby things, which are just, straight up, like, fucking, like, diseases with the body. These fucking prisoners had a 5-year jump start on everyone else. And the public is now trying to fucking break their way in because they want to eat those prisoners. And, you can kind of assume what's going to happen here. So assuming the prisoners were dead, because what would be fucking, the last priority for the government when they're facing massive public backlash and forms of anarchistic violence? What do you think that would be? Well, taking those disparate, sort of unsavory members of society, i.e. prisoners, and going, fuck them. Whatever, we got too much on our plate. Let's just leave them. They're already, locked in these fucking massive rooms underground. So they're huge fucking mutated monsters by now, but they're locked up. So whatever, fuck them. These scavengers who are raiding these black sites, they, without looking, they set the prisoners free and unleash these hulking masses of virile matter who just wreak havoc upon the earth. What fragments of this voracious world was left was now imposed with a new threat. The segregation of these sorry, I'm misreading my own handwriting again. Oh yeah, these arrogant, sort of parasitic predators that are the modern humans who formed as a result of the shortage, they get overpowered by these massive prisoners who turned into monsters that look kind of like this. Yeah. Would you stand a chance against that thing? I sure wouldn't. It doesn't matter if I've got a fucking flamethrower and a minigun attached. These prisoner monsters, though, they've been underground for so long that they essentially had become these new species of like hyper mutant diseases, and they're UV sensitive, so they end up, just when they're released, they kind of devour everyone, and then they roam the earth at night hunting people. Um, and yeah, so the reason they have this amplified sensitivity to UV rays is because of all the smog in, or well, this is part of why. There's so much, because imagine with this amount of violence, civil unrest, fucking arson, so on and so forth, a lot of smog is entering the atmosphere and causing, sunbeams to refract through the carbon, make UV rays much more intense. So, dwelling during the day is, even for the humans who are less mutated and still have some remnants of humanity left in them, it's painful to be in the sunlight. So, so yeah, all the amplified by the smog from the blazing infernos that now constituted the carcasses of old cities. I'm sorry, I just had to restate that because I just like that sentence. Becoming, the atmosphere, which among other things made agriculture nearly impossible. So, the people who did have enough sense to still, you know, be able to employ a degree of logic and try to farm again, it was like near impossible. You can't do that when you don't have GMOs, you don't have good seeds, you don't have good fertilizer or anything like that. And the sun is like blazing hot now because the planet's going through this really amplified greenhouse gas effect. I'm not even going to explain what the social commentary is there. I'm pretty sure you can figure that out for yourself. So it's big cloud in the atmosphere, which, among other things, made agriculture nearly impossible. Heightened radiation exposure to those who came out during the day, since they had hypersensitive immune systems and central nervous systems. This made what would soon become sunburns and freckles with big festering legions that weeped with pus and putrid stenches of decay. So essentially, skin cancer, which like my dad has had benign skin cancer since he was 8, because when he was a military brat, he moved from Air Force Base to Air Force Base with my grandfather, and I think the base he stayed at the longest was in Saskatchewan, which is kind of like Canada's Arizona. It's very flat, it's very deserty, it's very hot. He fell asleep for, I think she said, 8 hours in the sun, and he had a sunburn so bad that it caused his back to essentially grow these warts that he has to get burned off with liquid nitrogen, which I've had a wart burned off with liquid nitrogen. Fucking hurts. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like the wart sort of turns into a scab and it just falls off. But yeah, no, so imagine that. But it's not benign. It's malevolent, and it's 100-fold. So consuming these people, on top of the existing illnesses that are rebounding on them. And, so people are now starting to just rot alive. And, this putrid sense of decay, it attracts the mutant predators that prowl the nocturnal husks of society. And the story ends with a crew of subterranean government and world officials, the last ones left, all together underground, making the decision to send all their nuclear warheads into the ocean's fault lines and the base of supervolcanoes around the world, with the hopes of with the hopes of essentially annihilating the species. And they say this closing line. Prayer, if you will. God willing, our mistakes and sorry, I'm having trouble reading my handwriting again. God willing, our mistakes in an attempt to remediate things through our actions will rid the planet of these once human abominations and set a new blank planet where the cosmos, if they wish, will see a new Garden of Eden. And then it closes with them pressing the big red buttons and the warheads go off. Boom, 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 boom. Boom! There you have it. I hope with my interjections of sort of what motivated me there and the fact that I kind of had to break this up because of a phone call, that you enjoyed that. That was actually the first installment that I came up with in, this genre I'm trying to create. Aliens versus Angels, I would say falls under that genre because of the bleak ending. But it wasn't intended to, I didn't write that. I wrote that about, well over a year ago. This I wrote maybe a couple months ago. And it was the first of many stories. So if you want to hear more, I've got many more like it. But, of course, like this one, they're full of very bleak concepts. So yeah, but who, honestly, who likes fiction that always has a happy ending? I personally don't. I usually find that unrealistic, and I usually find it kind of ham-fisted, forced, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's it. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Stay sexy.